Cynthia Woods, the Philadelphia Tribune. Hi, good morning, John.
Katya, nice to meet you. What's up?
Nice to meet you. This is early for us Latinos. We're up, we're early, and we're. Did you have your coffee? Because I know
Coffee, yeah, I'm caffeinating all day long.
I have to say I love this role for you because I feel like I mean obviously we know that you can do dramatic, but what I really liked is you weren't the token Latino, you were more like the ego guy in the
Yeah,
room,
yeah.
right? Talk about because this movie is very different, right? Talk about when you were reading the script where you're like, oh my God, like what is happening? Or were you like, listen, I'm in. I don't know who I gotta talk to, but I want to do this.
Yeah, it's interesting on so many levels. Obviously, the inclusivity was amazing. It's the first time I've worked with two other Latinos who were in lead roles, so that was really incredible. The second thing was, yeah, it was an odd movie. It's a odd mix of things. It's an intellectual movie. I think it's a little bit like Luis Buñuel's Exterminating Angels, which is if you're a cinephile, it's an important film. I don't know. I enjoyed the first percenters and the bougie people getting their due. You know what I mean? Especially now in the climate where like these billionaires think they can run everything and they think they're entitled to everything. I like them getting their comeuppance. So I get to be a washed up action star, and I worked with enough of them that I knew what I had to do.
I feel like food is the hook, right? Like
Yeah.
you see it and you think it's gonna, but it's really the hook. But I was telling Judith, to me, it's like the seven deadly sins, right? Where
Yes. Yes.
everybody represents something, and he curated an evening, except it ends up like in sheer hell, and everybody thinks they're so special because that's like the crutch. They all think they're
Yeah.
so hot stuff. I get to be here. I get to be in this situation, not realizing that you're not here because you're special in the way that you think. Talk about that fact that especially your character lacks such self-awareness, especially as the stuff is going on. Your character's like, you probably recognize me, like trying to use fame to get out of that. Talk about that aspect where you're like, no, dude, there is no get out of jail
Yeah,
card
yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I love satirizing, privileged people, especially privileged people who, like you said, who have no self-awareness, who can't even be fake humble. Do you know what I mean? They can't even do that. And we've all met those types, and there are more of those types now, and we're more aware of them. These super hyper privileged people who feel very entitled about everything, about the planet, about democracy, and everything's on the line. So I think this movie like captures what we're feeling today, but in a food restaurant scenario. Do you know what I mean? It's like the restaurant is a microcosm of what's happening in America, what's happening in the world. With sort of these strange movements. There's so much people like billionaires wanting to take over democracy, Twitter, our elections, ignoring climate. I mean, it just plays to so many things. Even though we're like represent food critic, we represent a foodie, represent the tech bros, a rich guy, a movie star. They represent those certain types that we know, but we know who they really represent.
Yeah, and it's also like how quickly they all turned on each other. Like even you're sitting at the table with your assistant, and she's like, you know, I'm leaving you, and you're like, what do you mean? Like we did good work together, and she's like, I stole from me. He's like, I know, but still, even that conversation where you're like, really, you guys have time with all this other stuff going on to talk about this mundane thing? How much fun was shooting that?
Yeah, that was so much fun. I mean, Mark Mylod is amazing to work with. I mean, he gave us so much freedom to improvise, and we ad lib like crazy. And here I am with a chef's kiss of a cast. It was like watching a master class of acting at each table. Do you know what I mean? Everybody had their little story. We would all have to be in the same room because it was a 360 camera thing, so you always had to be there. So you heard everybody's scene. Usually you don't even see all that, all the other scenes, all the other actors, because you're not in a scene with them. But here we all applauded for each other. We supported each other. That was fun, and the improvs are brilliant, man. It was a really great crew.
Let's talk a little bit about Rafe because he was in it. Like he was like nutty in a good way. I love like when someone leans into their prey and like the clapping. Like, did that help get you kind of like jump? Because I know watching it in the audience, every time he clapped, like you knew it was starting to come, but you're like, oh my God, like, is there like, can you ring a bell or something like that? How much did that help kind of add the intensity of the film?
Oh, absolutely. Rafe really brought it. I mean, he's so quietly quiet and understated in his villainy that it's even creepier. And Hong Chau as well, sort of the assistant in this whole thing. I mean, the two of them sort of taking control over us and wrangling us and berating us and demeaning us to our faces in a very calm, surgical way was really terrifying.
I think this type of movie is scarier because just when you think you have it figured out, you don't. Also, let's talk about some of the other. I spoke to Judith a little yesterday, and then just having Anna. She's like the unicorn because he didn't plan on her being
Right.
there, and talk about that because she's like the only one that's like, don't you see something's wrong where everybody is like your character again is so into himself that he doesn't even notice that she's trying to alert everybody what's going on. Talk about her because I think that is also as a Latina to have somebody to be like the smart girl in the room.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I mean, she's the only one who's working class, a working girl. Everybody else is entitled and privileged, and she's not. So that's interesting that she's the only one who has an awareness of what's going on and is not buying the BS that he's spewing out. Rafe, I mean the chef, a Slovak. Yeah, it's so great. Anya was born in Argentina and she's a Latin girl. And then we have Amy Carrero, who's Cuban. We have Arturo Castro, who's Salvadorian, I think, or Guatemalan. I'm blanking on the specifics. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, it's so great to have a strong Latin female in the lead, who's the one who is our POV, our point of view as an audience. She's the one that we relate to and root for. And at the end,
She's the heroine. Now, I feel like this is also like a take on the Last Supper, except you're not too sure. I don't think these people are going to go to heaven.
and there's
How do
no
you feel
Jesus,
about
that's for sure.
right, exactly,
Unless
right?
it's a chef.
Exactly. How do you feel about it? Like looking at it like just as a spectator, not just an actor. Like, if this is like a cray Last Supper, like who else would you have at the table with you, to be a part of the craziness?
Yeah, it's like Dante's Inferno for me in a lot of ways. Sort of the way that Dante skewered the people of his time. He was putting them all in hell. The politicians, the bankers. He was taking down all his society. In this one, it'd be fun to have a couple of politicians to add to the group. Add a couple of bankers would be fun to add to the group. Tech, more techies. We need a lot more techies in there. Yeah, and developers. Developers are also can be like really, amoral, in my opinion.
Let's also talk about you. You, in spite of, all the, you talk very passionately and rightfully so about a lot of the limitations that are put on Latino actors to stay in the box. But you are still here, Mr. Leguizamo, still here, still representing, very New York guy and working. And your resume is not generic. Like you've played a lot of very interesting characters, including in this. What do you attribute to? I mean, some of it is luck, some of it obviously is divine intervention, but a lot of this is your talent. So what do you want to say to, the younger generation who's like, well, he did it before internet, he did it before streaming.
Right.
Like, what's your advice for that next group of young people?
Yeah, but it wasn't easy coming up in the time that I came up because, you know, we Latin people were not, we weren't being cast or considered. I mean, I went to school, acting school with some greats, and they were all white kids, and they're all going to 5 auditions a day, 6, 7. I was going to one every 5 months, even though here we are in the same school. I have equal ability. I just don't have any opportunities. And looking at the cast breakdown back in the day, it was kind of like Jim Crow because it was like white guy, white only. And then, if it was a Latin guy ever, it would be like, murderer, killer, it was like demeaning. So that made me try to find my own avenues because I saw that Latin people are everywhere. We're just invisible in the media, like a cultural apartheid. So I basically started writing my own stuff because I know there were Latin people everywhere, and I know if we could find each other, it would be the beautiful marriage, and it happened for me. Luckily with Mambo Mouth, and then with Spicorama and Freak, and the audience found me, and they fed me, and I fed them, and it helped me survive the sort of the Hollywoodened situation of it all. And then it also made me not respect Hollywood, which helped me too. That I didn't believe in Hollywood because
I don't know what happened.
oh, she's back.
Okay,
No.
sorry. I apologize. No, go ahead. You were saying that, you creating your own things helped you.
Oh, you heard?
Yes, I did. You were saying
Oh,
creating
okay.
your own things helped.
Yeah. So creating my own opportunity. So I say young Latin people and people of color is just keep doing your thing. Say yes to everything. Do it on the internet. I feel like the digital revolution has kind of created a little bit of a democratization in terms of entertainment. So I'm always following, Latin artists and comedians and on TikTok and the gram. So that's an opportunity. Hopefully we'll take charge of Hollywood soon because we have in music. I mean, Bad Bunny's #1 in the world, and before that was J Balvin. So we can do it in music when we're allowed to. When it's metrics, we Latin people win. When it's allowed when a gatekeeper's opinions or taste is what's going to decide our future, we're in trouble. But if we stick to metrics, like in stats and baseball, stats and politics, look how many Latin people got elected to office. We win, and that I'm hoping that those metrics become a way of keeping Hollywood honest.
What do you think? Because, sometimes Latinos will look at this and be like, oh, is this for us? Because we want the community to know that, we're in these spaces and in this movie. What do you want to say to Latinos? Like, no, I don't know about this. Is he gonna live? A, yes, he does live. And 2, I mean, you're in it for a long time. What do you want to say to that audience when they're looking at the previews of this? Like,
I think they're going to enjoy it. I mean, it's a thriller. Really, it looks like a food movie, like a independent kind of arty flick, but in the end, it's really a thriller, and shit's gonna go down, and it's gonna be fun, and they're gonna see a lot of great characters. They're gonna be able to see themselves in successful roles. I think it's a very positive film in a lot of ways. Mark Mylod was beautiful in his inclusivity, and obviously in his gift of storytelling and creating tension. And
absolutely. Absolutely. This has been an absolute pleasure. Longtime fan. And keep
thank you.
Speaking out, man. Keep making people uncomfortable. We support you.
That's my job. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Much love.
Much love.